It's an arms trade corridor. If you want to understand how Ukraine is winning the tactical battle for the front lines right now, look no further than this AASM hammer. It sends a chilling message to Putin and to the Ayatollah. We know where you are, and nowhere is safe. It's a naval choke point. It's about survival. It's about the next world war. Welcome to Battle Plans Exposed. I'm Philip Ingram. As Russia targets Ukraine's energy networks, plunging millions of civilians into sub-zero temperatures, Kyiv is hitting Vladimir Putin where it hurts most, over 1,000 kilometers away. Putin's assumed strategic depth is proving to be a lazy fallacy. No longer can he assume his industrial heartlands or murky shadow fleet is safe far from the kill zones in Eastern Europe. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic realm, a new front is opening up. We'll examine why Donald Trump is fixated on Greenland and why this Arctic sentry is suddenly a flashpoint for NATO. What are the warnings and signals telling us about where this escalation will go next? But first, let's have a look at what's been happening on the front lines. So here we have a French AASM hammer attack on a Russian drone operator's hideout in a building. This is a precision and very well targeted strike using a very sophisticated weapon. That indicates the high priority that Russian drone operators have on the battlefield. So the next one is a Ukrainian drone operator looking for targets on the battlefield using his thermal image. But as we saw there, he spotted something, but it wasn't a human being, it was a rabbit. And this is one of the dangers with thermal imagers. You see the heat source very clearly, but it's working out what it is. He has detected it. He needs to then be able to recognize it as a rabbit and not a human. And if he detects it as a human, identify it as enemy and not friendly. And this is where the sensors and the quality of the sensor is critical. And as he goes further forward across the battlefield, it's not just the rabbits that he's finding, but the Russians have these blankets that are thermal shields. Here we see him crouching down, trying to hide underneath it, but his thermal signature still remains visible to the drone operators. He's coming to a very sticky end. So quad bikes have become one of the most commonly used vehicles by Russian forces for large-scale column assaults. Here, Ukraine's 42nd Brigade is repelling an attack by a column of Russian infantry on quad bikes. Of course, they've got a huge thermal signature. They've got nowhere to hide from the drones with thermal cameras observing and coordinating attack drones come in and destroy them. This is showing Russian desperation and movement of small groups of, I was going to say determined men, but from a Russian perspective, they're meat grinder men going forward with the aim of trying to get into Ukrainian territory. Few succeed. For years, Putin has treated the Caspian Sea as a private lake, a sanctuary for its fleet and a bank for its war chest. So here we have the Caspian Sea, cocooned by Russian Federation friendly countries, in particular Iran, and far from the bloody war zone in Ukraine. The Kremlin believed its critical assets here were untouchable. That sanctuary is now up in flames. Ukraine has expanded the battlefield, striking deep into the heart of Russia's energy sector. It's striking oil platforms within the Caspian Sea with long-range drones. It's delivering precision attacks that take Putin's oil machine offline. With the first attacks on 3 Lukoil drilling platforms in the north of the Caspian Sea, attacking turbine and ventilation systems, these precise strikes halted operations completely. But it's not just the oil money the Caspian Sea is a facilitator of, it's an arms trade corridor. Since the start of the war, billions of dollars of weapons from Iran have been shipped across this sea. Primarily coming from Iran via the ports of Amirabad and Anzali. Their destinations are ports in Russia like Astrakhan, which is via the Volga River, and Makashkala. An Iranian freight tanker, Rona, reportedly made roughly 20 trips between Iran and Russia between October 2024 and December 2025. Whilst its official manifest often listed dry cargo, intelligence agencies suspected the vessel was ensuring a steady flow of weapons to support Russian operations. Shahed drone components, artillery shells and long-range ballistic missiles were all allegedly transported on this ship. Well, that isn't going to happen anymore, as the Rona now lies at the bottom of the Caspian Sea. The Rona was heading towards the port of Astrakhan when it sent an SOS distress signal near Turkmenistan. On January the 14th, it was sunk. Officially, no cause is known. Unofficially, it's most likely a Ukrainian drone strike or sabotage operation with a fire in the engine room being cited as the cause. In other Ukrainian Special Forces operations, with assistance from an insurgent group called Black Spark, Ukraine hit 2 vessels under US sanctions for their roles in the arms bridge between Iran and Russia. Bear in mind, the Ukrainian drones need to fly over 1,200 kilometers over Russian airspace to reach the Caspian Sea and reach their targets. But we'll take a look at the types of weapons carrying out these attacks later in this episode. So all of this strategic activity in the Caspian Sea severely hampers Russia's efforts on the front line. It chokes off much needed weaponry and money and ability to keep the war going. It sends a chilling message to Putin and to the Ayatollah. We know where you are and nowhere is safe. And of course, the relationship with Iran is critical, and therefore, the issues that are going on with Iran, with the protesters potentially aiming to overthrow the Ayatollah and the regime, is something that concerns Russia enormously. Russia is still reliant on Iran for a large proportion of its Shahed drone technology and other military support. If Russia lost yet another ally in the Middle East, another ally it's got a trade route with, this will further isolate it. And Putin, I think, is concerned. Now let's have a look at the other side of the world. Or more correctly, the top of the world. It sounded like a joke at first, didn't it? The President of the United States wants to buy Greenland. The memes were endless. Gold towers and icebergs. The Trump casinos in the tundra. But here at Battle Plans Exposed, we don't look at memes, we look at the maps. Now today, we're peeling back the layers on why Donald Trump was absolutely fixated on this frozen rock. And let me tell you, it's not about building hotels, as he talks about elsewhere. It's about survival. It's about the next world war. And was this just Trump's bluster? Or is there something terrifyingly logical to wanting to own Greenland? It's actually cold hard military logic. If you look at the world from the side of a globe, Greenland is just an island. But if you look at it from the top, from the North Pole down, Greenland isn't an island, it's the cork in a bottle. It is the single most important piece of real estate on the earth for the defense of North America. But why is this? Well, there are 3 reasons. 1, physics. It's the highway for nuclear missiles from Russia to the United States, across the North Pole, past Greenland, across Canada and intercontinental United States. 2, money, specifically rare earth metals. The metals inside your smartphone and all technologies. The deposits in Greenland are potentially huge. And 3, the melting ice is opening a new ocean that Russia and China want to control. That ocean is connecting the Pacific through the northern routes to the Atlantic. So let's start with that first point. Most people look at a Mercator projection map, the flat one on school walls. It makes Greenland look huge, but out of the way. But look at this polar projection that we have here. It puts the Arctic Ocean right in the center. And if you draw a straight line, a great circle route from a Russian ICBM silo to Washington, D.C., here, it flies directly over Greenland. It is the shortest path for a ballistic missile. If Russia launches, the missiles don't fly across the Atlantic. They fly over the North Pole. Greenland is the watchtower. The US has already got a base there called Thule, up in the very northeast of Greenland. now called Pitifik Space Base. It houses the 12th Space Warning Squadron. They operate a massive radar array that looks deep into space. If the US were to lose that radar, the US loses its eyes, and that radar detects Russian launch minutes after it happens. And we have to remember that Russian ballistic missiles, their intercontinental ballistic missiles, which is what they would use, have a trajectory that goes up into space. Hence why the surveillance of space is critical before they come down in a ballistic trajectory onto targets in the United States. If the US didn't have Greenland, they wouldn't know the missiles were coming until they were much, much closer. Those extra minutes are the difference between intercepting a nuke or losing a city. Trump hates reliance. He looked at the map and saw vulnerability. He thought if Denmark gets weak or China pressurizes them, his radar is at risk. He wanted to close the deed to guarantee the safety of the Golden Dome missile shield that he was proposing over the whole of continental North America, not just the United States, but Canada and Greenland, and reaching high into the Arctic. Next, let's talk about the water. The ice is melting. The superpowers see this as an opportunity. It is a gold rush. For human history, the Arctic Ocean was a wall of ice, but now it's becoming a highway. The US call it the transpolar route or the Northern Sea route. It cut shipping time between China and Europe by 40% compared to the Suez Canal. That is trillions of dollars in trade. Russia knows this. They're building a fleet of nuclear-powered icebreakers to control that route. To get out of the Arctic and into the Atlantic Ocean, Russian submarines and Chinese ships have to pass through what's also known as the Greenland, Iceland, UK gap, this area of territory and sea here. Greenland, Iceland, United Kingdom, it's a naval choke point. If you control Greenland, you control the western wall of that gap. You can bottle up the Russian Northern Fleet, which is coming out of here and round into the Atlantic, or here and round into the Arctic Ocean. In 2018, a Chinese state company tried to build 3 airports in Greenland. The Pentagon panicked. They pressurized Denmark to kill the deal. Trump saw that as a close call and decided he didn't want to rely on Danish bureaucrats to stop Beijing next time. Next, we have to realize that there's something in the ground. The buried treasure. Greenland has some of the largest undeveloped deposits of rare earth elements in the world, and specifically in a site called Caspian in the southern tip of Greenland. These are the things that you find in our batteries. They make the F-35 fighter jets work. They're used in electric cars. In fact, they're used in everything high-tech. And there's a terrifying statistic. China currently controls about 90% of the processing of these metals. If China shuts off the tap, the US military stops building guidance chips. Greenland has enough rare earths to supply the West for decades. But right now, it's sitting there largely untapped because of the ice that's on top of it, but the ice is melting. Trump's logic was, why let China buy these mines? We should own the ground they sit on. So it's an economic issue. It's economic warfare. So looking at all of this, the geography, the missiles, the trade routes, the metals, it makes sense. But here's the twist. Trump actually doesn't need to buy it. There's a dusty document in the archives, the 1951 Defense of Greenland Agreement. It's still active in law, in international law and in US law, and it's incredibly powerful. The treaty signed between the United States and Denmark during the Cold War already gives the US defense areas in Greenland. The US can operate bases there rent-free. They have the right to unrestricted overflight. They have the right to move troops and ships through their territory for defense purposes. They essentially already have military sovereignty over the parts of Greenland that really matter. And the 1951 treaty is the US's ace in the hole. They can expand the airbase at Thule and patrol the waters, and they don't need to pay the Danish subsidies to the Greenlandic government to secure their missiles. So we have to ask, why did Trump want to buy it? Essentially, I think it was for leverage. By threatening to buy the whole island, he woke everyone up to the issue. He forced Denmark and Greenland to take the Chinese threat seriously. He forced NATO to take the Chinese threat seriously. It was a negotiation tactic. He demanded the whole pie so they would give him the slice that he actually needed. And that was blocking China from access to these mines and these airports. The fixation wasn't madness. It was a ruthless calculation of geography and resources. But the reality is, thanks to a piece of paper signed in 1951, the US battle plans for the Arctic are already safe. And people don't realize that the 1951 agreement is held under domestic law in the United States. So if Donald Trump had actually ordered US troops to take Greenland militarily, it would have been an illegal order. If any US generals had actually followed that instruction and tried to take Greenland through military force, they could be prosecuted in the United States under US domestic law. Lawfare is important, and this is where democracies rule over autocracies or dictatorships. Now, let's have a look at Ukraine's medium to long range capabilities, the ones that are changing the dynamic of this war. So here we have a bit of new technology. This is a Rona 330 strike drone capable of flying about 500 kilometers, supplied by the French. It is an example of one of the high-tech drones that are coming out of European nations into Ukraine to support what they're doing. But the Ukrainians have their own domestic drones. We have the Farpoint FP1 drone. This is the drone that we often see in pictures over Russia, flying into airfields near Moscow, flying across into the Caspian Sea, taking long-range warheads into Russia's oil and gas infrastructure, carrying out those devastating attacks. So remember the Flamingo missile, the FP5? The same company, Farpoint, is churning out Ukraine's answer to the Shahad drone. This is the poor man's cruise missile. It can carry a warhead of several dozen kilos to a precise target up to 1,400 kilometers away. In less than 2 years, production of the FP1 drone has been ramped up and now exceeds 2,000 units per month at roughly the same cost, $55,000 per drone. The company currently produces about 100 drones a day, which in total carries about 50% of Ukrainian strikes on Russian targets, as well as cruise missiles, and tests Ukrainian ballistics. At the same time, they're developing the FP7 and FP9 ballistic missiles designed to deliver payloads of up to 800 kilograms, 855 kilometers away. Farpoint is technically ready to produce 3 FP7 units per day, aiming to reduce the price of the missile to less than $1 million apiece. Their architecture has a pathway towards air defense missile capabilities baked into it, and from a ground-based platform offering strategic flexibility. And of course, Ukraine's domestic weapon production is reducing its reliance on weapons coming from the West, and in particular the United States. And this is something critical to the longevity of Ukraine's ability to sustain the war. But allies are still producing capabilities. You know, the UK, Britain, is producing the Nightfall missile, which is again a ballistic missile being developed rapidly for production in the UK and supply to Ukraine. Tens of kilograms of warhead going over hundreds of kilometers of distance, and an ability to potentially influence programs in the UK in the future. While Ukraine is currently squeezing Putin's assets in the Caspian with drones, the UK is fast-tracking a weapon that will change the geometry of the war entirely. It's called Project Nightfall. The Ministry of Defence has just released new details on this deep strike ballistic missile programme. And we're not talking about a slow-moving cruise missile here. We're talking about a tactical ballistic hammer designed to strike deep into Russian territory. UK Defence Minister Luke Pollard confirmed that the development contracts are being awarded in the spring. The goal? To have the first 3 test missiles ready for firing within 12 months. This is an accelerated procurement and military speak for we need this yesterday. Nightfall is designed to hit targets over 500 kilometres away. That puts major Russian logistical hubs, command and control centres, and even assets near Moscow well within the kill zone. But it's not just about distance, it's about resilience. These are missiles being built to operate in a GPS-denied environment. In other words, when Russian electronic warfare is screaming at maximum volume, the Skyfall will still find its mark. European Meteor missiles. Meteor is developed through a European consortium led by the MBDA company, with Germany, the United Kingdom, France, Italy, Spain and Sweden all participating in the programme. The missile uses a solid fuel variable flow ducted rocket motor manufactured in Germany by the MBDA subsidiary Bayern Chemie. And according to the company, the ramjet propulsion system allows the Meteor to maintain a thrust throughout its flight, contributing to what it describes as a larger no-escape zone compared with many conventional air-to-air missiles. The missile is currently integrated on several frontline combat aircraft types, including the Typhoon, the Rafale and the Gripen. And of course, the Ukrainians are now flying the Rafale, and is also planned for use on South Korea's KF-21 Borame. And finally, we have the AASM Hammer missile. If you want to understand how Ukraine is winning the tactical battle for the front lines right now, look no further than this AASM Hammer. Paris has just committed to doubling the production of these smart munitions to 1,200 units a year. For the Russian commanders in the "don't call it a war zone," that is a terrifying statistic. Now, don't let the name fool you. This isn't just a bomb, it's a modular transformation kit. It takes a standard dumb gravity bomb and turns it into a rocket-assisted precision-guided missile. What makes the Hammer unique isn't just its 70-kilometre range, it's how it gets there. Unlike the American JDAM, which relies on gliding, the French Hammer has an integrated rocket motor, and this allows Ukrainian pilots to perform what we call toss bombing, from extremely low altitudes, staying below the horizon of Russian radar, and then firing the bomb upwards. The rocket kicks in and carries it over the terrain and delivers a 250 kilogram or even 1,000 kilogram warhead within meter-perfect accuracy. Critically, the Hammer doesn't care about GPS jamming, and while Russia has had some success in jamming Western satellite-guided weapons, the Hammer uses a hybrid of inertial navigation and infrared homing. In its terminal phase, the missile uses a preloaded digital picture of the target to guide itself home. You can jam satellites all you want, you can't jam the Hammer's eyes. The French have rewritten the rules of the pop-up attack. They've given Ukraine's aging Soviet-era jets the teeth of the 21st century hunter. So as we've seen today, from the oil platforms of the Caspian Sea to Putin's murky shadow fleet, Russia can no longer protect its industrial heartlands from the reach of Ukrainian innovation. But as one front stabilises, another is beginning to freeze. Far in the high north, Greenland is rapidly becoming NATO's next critical flashpoint, and we'll be watching the signals very closely indeed. But thank you for watching this episode of The Sun's Battle Plans Exposed. Please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any content, and like and share it on your networks. And if you've got any comments or ideas, please put them in the comments below, and I look forward to reading what you have to say, but more importantly, to seeing you again in the next episode. Thank you. Goodbye.